Welcome to Fresh Start with Jason Cline.
Welcome to the Fresh Start podcast with Attorney Jason Cline, founder of the Law Office of Jason Cline in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Jason helps individuals and families across New Mexico find clarity and confidence through Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcy solutions. I'm Lisa Mosbey, and today we're talking about how bankruptcy treats tax debt and clearing up the confusion about what kinds of taxes can be included in your case. Welcome, Jason. I am looking forward to this conversation. Shall we jump in?
Sounds great, Lisa.
Jason, when people come in for a consultation, how often do they ask whether bankruptcy can wipe out tax debt?
Actually a lot. It's very often. Tax debt is one of the biggest concerns that people have. And there's a lot of confusion around it. Most people assume that taxes can never be discharged, which isn't always true. So it's definitely something we should talk about in almost every consultation.
And then what kinds of taxes can actually be discharged in bankruptcy and which ones can't?
So there are some income taxes that can be discharged, but they have to meet specific requirements. So in general, the tax return has to be filed has to be at least 3 tax years old, has to have been filed on time, and then it can't have been assessed in the last 240 days, so basically 6 months. On the other hand, things like recent taxes, payroll taxes, and trust fund taxes, property taxes, they're not dischargeable.
And then why are there so many rules and time limits around tax debt? Things like when the return is due or filed.
So the IRS has really built these rules to make sure bankruptcy isn't used to avoid recent tax obligations. And the idea is that if the tax debt is older and has been sitting there for a while, it may be eligible for a discharge. But the newest taxes are treated differently because they are considered more recent obligations. So the government wants their money, so we have to give them the new ones.
And so for the more recent ones, they'll set up a payment plan, and the ones that are past 3 years, those can be looked at as potentially discharged. Is that correct?
That's correct. For the most part, the IRS is going to set up a payment plan for you to get those paid off. They're going to charge interest on it, but you can usually get that set up. Then if it's over 3 years and if it was filed on time, if they're filed late, they're not going to be discharged either. But 3 years old and on time, they can be discharged.
So I'm following you with the income taxes. Let's talk a little bit about payroll or trust fund taxes. What are they and why do they never go away?
So income taxes are based on what you personally owe on your earnings. So payroll and trust fund taxes are different because those are taxes that were withheld from employees or are supposed to be passed on to the government. So basically, if you own your business and you're paying employees, a lot of times called 941 taxes, those ones aren't your own personal liability. That's the business's liability, and they cannot be discharged. Trust fund taxes, trust funds are kind of their own animal too, and they're not necessarily your individual debt as well. And they can actually be passed to the government as well anyway. But because of that, those types of taxes are not dischargeable in bankruptcy.
And Jason, a lot of people don't just owe one kind of debt. They may owe taxes, credit card debt, maybe medical bills. How does bankruptcy help bring all of that under one contract or one case under control, I'll say?
So that's actually the most common situation. Generally, people have the tax debt, the credit card debts. Medical is a big, huge one. That's one of the number one reasons why people file for bankruptcy is medical debt. So having all of that and even the personal loans and the payday loans, bankruptcy, it's looking at the full picture. All unsecured debt we're going to try to get rid of here. There's very few exceptions on what we can't. So, well, some of the tax debt may not be dischargeable. The credit cards and the medical bills, they're going to be dischargeable. And sometimes just by eliminating those other debts, it frees up the income so you can deal with the remaining tax obligations on your own in a more manageable way.
And I'm wondering, in a Chapter 13 case, how do taxes fit into the repayment plan? Are they treated like other debts, or do they get special priority?
That's a great question, and it's a big reason why I often will advise filing a Chapter 13 over a Chapter 7, because taxes will get a special priority in the Chapter 13. In fact, they're called a priority debt if they're owed in the previous 3 years. So in those tax debts, we build them into the Chapter 13 plan, spread them out over a 3 to 5 year payment plan to get them paid back, and we cut off the interest right then. So there's not going to be any more interest or penalties paid on those. So we're just going to have a flat amount paid over the 3 to 5 years. And then the older taxes that we could discharge, as we talked about earlier, we're still going to discharge those in the Chapter 13. And we'll get the priority ones paid back without the interest. So sometimes that can be of a great benefit to a person.
Jason, let's talk tax liens. If a lien is already recorded against someone's property, does bankruptcy remove it?
Okay, so with a tax lien, this is a big difference in Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. So in a Chapter 7 case, no, bankruptcy is not going to do a thing for it. It'll remain on the property. You're going to have to make arrangements to get that thing paid or refinance or sell and pay it off. Those are the only ways you're getting that tax lien off if you file Chapter 7. Chapter 13, on the other hand, we can actually get some of it, if not all of it, stripped off of your property. So tax lien is recorded against all of your property. It's really recorded against your name. And in Chapter 13, we have the ability to bring that value or bring the amount that has to be paid back to the value of your property. So if you've got a $90,000 tax lien and have a property worth $10,000, we can make it so you're only going to pay back $10,000 and then treat the remaining $80,000 of that $90,000 lien as either an unsecured debt to discharge or a priority debt to pay back in the Chapter 13 plan. So we can get those liens off the house in a Chapter 13. And again, even in Chapter 7, if we were to eliminate all the other underlying debts, then it could give you the ability to repay the tax lien. So.
And then how can clients avoid new tax problems while their bankruptcy case is open?
So, the biggest thing is to just stay current, make sure your withholdings are correct, which that can be very difficult. Sometimes it's nearly impossible to figure out exactly how much you need to be withholding. And sometimes you just need to withhold extra to make sure that your withholdings are correct and you don't get new tax debt as we go along. And then if you do get a tax liability during it, then try to make sure you pay it off or get into a payment plan. In a Chapter 13 case, we may be able to modify the plan to include that new liability too, but then it raises your monthly payment. So biggest thing is to make sure your withholdings are correct and that you're just staying current on that tax debt now.
Jason, here's where I want to wrap it up today. When someone's worried about the IRS coming after their wages or refund, how does filing a bankruptcy give them immediate protection and a chance to reset?
So just like with any other creditor, the automatic stay does apply to the IRS as well. So that means that wage garnishments, bank levies, any other collection actions that the IRS may be trying to take have to stop the moment that we file the bankruptcy case. So Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, it's going to stop it and it's going to buy time. So gives you that breathing room to help figure out a plan here. In Chapter 13, we're going to take care of that debt. We're going to get it paid back or discharge, whatever's applicable here. Chapter 7 buys you 3 months to get rid of your other debt and just devise a plan to get rid of any non-dischargeable taxes that will remain after the Chapter 7 is done.
I actually have one more question, and that is, how often can you file Chapter 7 or Chapter 13? Say somebody did get into tax trouble again after filing or had a medical situation that occurred after filing. When can they actually file again?
Okay, so it depends on the chapters that you're going from here. So if you're filing a Chapter 7 and you're going to file another Chapter 7, that's going to be 8 years in between. Chapter 7 to Chapter 13. In order to receive a discharge in that Chapter 13, it's going to be 2 years. After Chapter 13, you can have almost immediate. However, you can file a Chapter 13 right after a Chapter 7 if you're going to be paying it back in full. There's no discharge anymore. Let's say you filed the Chapter 7, got yourself out of all of the rest of the debt there, but still find yourself struggling to pay back that IRS debt that was not discharged. You can turn around and file a Chapter 13 directly after it, and then just have it paying the IRS debt alone, and there is no other debt to take care of. A lot of people call this a Chapter 20.
This has been very educational and insightful. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you being here.
Folks, that's it for today's episode of the Fresh Start podcast. To learn more about Attorney Jason Cline and how he can help you navigate bankruptcy with confidence, visit attorneyjasoncline.com. Thank you so much for listening. And remember to like, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need it today. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.